I'm not great with big speeches. I've never believed love needs to be loud to be real. But there are moments in life when silence just isn't enough. When you feel something so true, so steady, that you have to say it out loud. You become my peace in a noisy world, my home when everything else feels uncertain. And there's a question that's been living in my heart for a long time now. I've always believed that the most important things don't arrive with noise or drama. They show up slowly, honestly, and they stay. Love for me has never been about grand gestures or perfect words. It's been about consistency, about showing up when it matters, about choosing the same person, again and again, even when the days are ordinary, even when life feels heavy, even when nothing is certain except the feeling that this is where I belong. When I think about you, I don't think about a single moment. I think about 1,000 quiet ones that stitch themselves together without asking for attention. The way time seems softer around you. The way the world feels less sharp. The way I breathe differently, like my body understands something my mind is still learning to explain. You didn't change my life by force. You didn't come in and turn everything upside down. You just stood there exactly as you are, and somehow everything started to make sense. I found myself listening more, slowing down, not because I had to, but because I wanted to, because being present with you felt natural, like something I'd been practicing for years without knowing why. There's a steadiness in you that I trust, a kindness that doesn't ask for credit, a strength that doesn't need to be proven. When I look at you, I don't see perfection, I see truth, and truth has always mattered more to me than anything polished or ideal. I've learned that love isn't about being fearless, it's about being willing, willing to stay, willing to try again, willing to listen when it's uncomfortable, willing to admit when you're wrong. With you, I don't feel like I have to perform or pretend. I can be quiet, I can be unsure, I can be tired, and none of that makes me less in your eyes. That kind of acceptance changes a person. It makes you want to be better, not out of pressure, but out of gratitude, out of respect for what's been given freely. There are days when the world feels loud and demanding, when expectations pile up and the future feels like too much to hold all at once. And then there are moments with you that bring everything back to something simple, a conversation that doesn't rush, a silence that isn't empty, a shared glance that says more than words ever could. Those moments remind me that life doesn't need to be conquered. It needs to be lived, slowly, honestly, side by side. I think about all the versions of myself I've been, all the roads that could have led somewhere else, and I keep coming back to this one truth. I'm grateful they led me to you. Loving you hasn't been about losing myself. It's been about recognizing myself, about understanding what matters and letting go of what doesn't. I don't need promises carved in stone or futures planned down to the last detail. What I value is commitment in motion, the kind that wakes up every morning and decides to care, the kind that stays curious, the kind that keeps learning who the other person is, even after years of knowing them. With you, that learning never feels exhausting. It feels like a privilege, like being trusted with something rare. I notice the way you move through the world, the way you treat people when no one is watching, the way you hold your ground without hardening your heart. Those things stay with me. They influence how I see things, how I respond, how I choose. You've become part of my inner compass, not by asking, but simply by being. And that's something I don't take lightly. I know how fragile life can be. I know how quickly things can change. That awareness doesn't make me afraid. It makes me intentional. It makes me want to invest my time, my energy, my loyalty where it truly matters. What I feel for you isn't about intensity that burns fast and disappears. It's about warmth that lasts. It's about building something steady enough to stand through storms and quiet enough to feel like home. I imagine days that aren't remarkable to anyone else but mean everything to us. Shared routines, shared burdens, shared laughter that comes from wing each other deeply. I imagine growth, not always comfortable but always honest. I imagine choosing patience when it's easier to walk away. I imagine holding space for each other's dreams without trying to control them. I don't have all the answers. I don't know exactly how everything will unfold, but I know how I feel when I'm with you. I know the calm that settles in. I know the clarity that follows. I know that love, real love, isn't about certainty of outcome. It's about certainty of intention. And my intention has been quietly forming, day by day, moment by moment, shaped by your presence, grounded by your trust, strengthened by everything we've already shared. Don't think partnership is about standing still or staying the same. Life doesn't work that way. People change, seasons shift, priorities evolve, and time keeps moving, whether we're ready or not. What matters to me is having someone beside me who understands that change isn't a threat, it's a journey. With you, I don't feel like I have to hold on to who I was yesterday. I feel safe becoming who I'll be tomorrow. There's a quiet confidence in knowing that growth doesn't have to pull us apart, that it can actually bring us closer if we let it. I don't expect us to always agree or to always know the right thing to do. What I believe in is choosing to face those moments together, without keeping score, without trying to win, without turning distance into a habit. Time has a way of revealing people. It shows you what, stays when things get complicated, who listens when it would be easier to walk away, who remains kind when patience is tested. Watching you move through different chapters of life has taught me a lot about resilience. Not the loud kind, not the kind that demands recognition, but the steady kind that just keeps going, the kind that adapts without losing its core. That's the kind of strength I respect. That's the kind of strength I want to stand beside. I don't need certainty that every day will be easy. I need trust that when it's not, we'll still choose each other in the middle of it. I think about the passage of years, how they carry both joy and weight, how they bring success and disappointment, clarity and confusion. I don't see those things as obstacles to love. I see them as proof of it. Proof that love isn't something you protect by keeping life small. It's something you protect by staying open, by allowing experiences to shape you without hardening you. With you, I feel like there's room for that openness, room to fail and recover, room to question and learn, room to grow without fear that growth will cost me the connection we share. Partnership to me is about being witnesses to each other's lives, seeing the struggles that don't make it into stories, understanding the victories that don't come with applause, being present for the in-between moments that don't look important from the outside, but mean everything when you're inside them. I want to know you not just you are now, but as you'll be in years I can't yet imagine. I want to learn your changes, not resist them. I want to walk through time with curiosity instead of expectation, allowing us to redefine what we need as we go. There's a comfort in imagining a future that doesn't demand perfection, a future where we don't rush each other or compete with time, where we understand that some days we'll be strong together, and some days one of us will carry more weight than the other. That balance matters to me. The understanding that partnership isn't always equal in effort, but it's always equal in care. Don't measure commitment by constant intensity, I measure it by endurance, by the willingness to stay engaged when novelty fades and reality settles in. Br. I've learned that growth can be uncomfortable. It asks questions we don't always want to answer. It challenges habits that once felt safe. Doing that alone can feel overwhelming. Doing it with someone who respects your pace, who doesn't rush your healing or minimize your doubts, changes everything. With you, I don't feel pushed forward or held back. I feel accompanied, like whatever direction life pulls us in, we'll be facing it side by side, not dragging each other, not walking miles apart. Change doesn't scare me when I think of it with you. It feels manageable, it feels human. I imagine us learning new versions of each other, sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. I imagine moments where we look back and barely recognize who we used to be. And instead of mourning that, we feel grateful. Grateful that we allowed ourselves to evolve. Grateful that we didn't cling to old definitions of love, but let it mature, deepen, quiet down in the best way. I imagine a partnership that doesn't demand we stay young or unmarked by life, but one that values every line, every lesson, every shift in perspective. What I want isn't a promise that nothing will ever change. I want a promise that when it does, we'll meet it with honesty, that we'll talk instead of retreating, that we'll listen instead of assuming, that we'll keep choosing connection even when it takes effort. I believe that kind of partnership is built over time, through shared patience, shared responsibility, shared courage. It's built by two people who understand that love isn't proven by avoiding hardship, but by how they move through it together. Being with you has reshaped how I think about the future. It no longer feels like something I need to control or figure out all at once. It feels like something we step into gradually, learning as we go. That sense of shared direction matters more to me than any fixed destination, knowing that whatever comes, we'll face it with mutual respect, with room for growth, with the understanding that neither of us has to walk alone through the changes that time inevitably brings. Gratitude has a quiet way of changing how you see the world. It doesn't announce itself, it settles in slowly, through moments you don't always recognize right away. With you, gratitude shows up in the smallest details, in the ordinary days that don't look important from the outside but feel full when I'm inside them with you. I find myself thankful not for one defining moment, but for the accumulation of many simple ones. Conversations that wander without needing a destination, shared routines that become comforting without trying to be special, laughter that comes easily, not because everything is perfect, but because we understand each other well enough to let our guard down. I'm grateful for the way you exist in my life without trying to dominate it. You don't demand attention, yet you have it. You don't ask to be centered, yet everything seems to orbit more calmly when you're near. That kind of presence is rare. It's not something you can force or imitate. It's something that comes from authenticity, from being comfortable in your own skin. Being around that has taught me to appreciate stillness, to recognize that not everything meaningful needs to be loud or dramatic. There are moments I replay in my mind that wouldn't make sense to anyone else. A look exchanged across a room, a pause in conversation where nothing needed to be said, the way your expression softens when you feel safe. Those moments carry weight for me. They remind me that connection isn't built on spectacle. It's built on awareness, on noticing each other, on being present enough to understand what matters without having to explain it every time. I'm grateful for how you show up, even when you're tired, even when life asks more than it gives back. There's honesty in that, a willingness to be real instead of polished. I don't need perfection from you. I value sincerity far more. I notice the effort you put into things that no one applauds, the patience you give when it would be easier to withdraw, the care you offer without expecting it to be returned in the same form. Those things don't fade with time, they deepen. There's a kind of gratitude that comes from being understood without having to translate yourself. With you, I don't feel like I have to constantly explain who I am or why I am the way I am. You listen beyond words. You notice patterns, moods, silences. That kind of attention makes space for trust. It allows me to relax into who I am instead of guarding it. I'm thankful for that sense of ease, for the way it turns even quiet moments into something meaningful. I think about the experiences we've shared, not just the happy ones, but the challenging ones too. The times when things didn't go as planned, when emotions ran deeper than expected, when uncertainty lingered longer than we wanted. Even those moments hold value for me now. They showed me your resilience, your honesty, your capacity to stay present even when it would have been easier to shut down. I don't separate gratitude from difficulty. I think they belong together because it's often through difficulty that you truly see who someone is. I'm grateful for how you've influenced the way I move through life, not by instruction, but by example. The way you care about things quietly, the way you treat people with respect even when there's nothing to gain, the way you stay true to yourself without needing validation. Those qualities don't just stay with you, they ripple outward. They've shaped how I think, how I respond, how I choose. That kind of impact isn't temporary. It stays. There's gratitude in knowing that what we share isn't built on constant excitement, but on something steadier, something that doesn't fade when novelty does. I appreciate the comfort of familiarity, the way it grows richer over time instead of duller, the way knowing each other better doesn't make things predictable, but more intentional. Every shared experience adds another layer of understanding, another reason to value what we have. I'm thankful for the balance we find in each other, for the way we can be strong and vulnerable without keeping score, for the understanding that support doesn't always look the same. Sometimes it's words, sometimes it's silence, sometimes it's simply being there. You've shown me that care doesn't need to be perfect to be meaningful. It needs to be genuine, and genuineness is something you offer consistently. There's a quiet joy in realizing that someone has become part of your everyday thoughts without effort, that their well-being matters to you naturally without obligation. I'm grateful for that feeling, for the way concern, respect, and affection have woven themselves into something stable and real. It's not something I take lightly, It's something I notice, appreciate, and hold with care. When I look at the path that led us here, I don't see coincidence. I see timing. I see readiness. I see two lives intersecting at a moment when both could recognize the value of what was forming. That awareness adds another layer of gratitude. Gratitude for patience, for lessons learned before we met, for the understanding that made it possible to recognize what this is when it arrived. I'm grateful for the way you allow space for individuality while still creating togetherness, respecting differences without trying to erase them, for understanding that connection doesn't require sameness. It requires acceptance. That approach makes everything feel more sustainable, more honest. It removes pressure and replaces it with trust. Even in moments of uncertainty, there's gratitude. Gratitude for knowing that whatever questions remain, they're faced with mutual respect. Gratitude for conversations that don't avoid difficult topics. Gratitude for the willingness to stay engaged instead of turning away. Those choices matter. They accumulate. They define the depth of what we share. I don't need to catalog ever. A reason I'm thankful. They show up naturally, day after day, in ways both visible and subtle, in how I think of you when something good happens, in how I feel steadier knowing you're part of my life, in how the idea of sharing more time, more moments, more ordinary days feels right without needing to be justified. Gratitude in that sense isn't a reaction. It's a state of being that has quietly become part of how I experience life with you in. I think about the future. I don't imagine something distant or abstract. I imagine something built slowly, with care, shaped by everyday choices rather than dramatic promises. What matters to me isn't the idea of a perfect life, but the intention behind how it's lived. With you, I see a future grounded in respect, the kind that listens before it speaks, the kind that honors boundaries instead of testing them, the kind that understands that love isn't ownership but responsibility, responsibility to protect each other's dignity even in moments of disagreement, even when emotions run high. Trust is something I don't treat lightly. It's not given all at once. It's earned through consistency, honesty, and the courage to be real when it would be easier to hide. I see that in you, in the way you show up the same way whether things are going well or not, in the way your words align with your actions. That alignment matters to me more than charm or promises. It tells me that what we build together can stand on something solid, not perfection, but reliability. Presence is another thing I value deeply. Not just being in the same space, but truly being there, paying attention, choosing engagement over distraction. With you, presence feels natural. It doesn't feel forced or performative. It feels like a mutual decision to prioritize the moment we're in. I imagine a future where that presence becomes a habit, where even as life grows busier, we continue to make space for each other, where listening doesn't become something we forget to do. Respect, trust, and presence aren't abstract ideas to me. They're daily practices. They show up in how we speak to each other when we're tired, in how we handle disagreements without trying to hurt, in how we support each other's independence instead of feeling threatened by it. I want a future where we don't shrink each other to feel secure, where we encourage growth, knowing that two strong individuals can still choose to stand together. I imagine building something that doesn't rush milestones or compare itself to anyone else's timeline, a future that unfolds at its own pace, guided by what feels right rather than what's expected. That kind of patience creates room for depth, for understanding, for a connection that doesn't feel fragile or conditional. I don't want us to hold on to love out of habit or fear of change. I want us to keep choosing it because it continues to make sense, because it continues to feel honest. There will be moments when trust is tested, when misunderstandings arise, when stress clouds judgment. I don't expect those moments to disappear. What I believe in is how we respond to them. Choosing conversation over silence, choosing empathy over defensiveness, choosing to repair instead of retreat. Those choices shape the future more than any plan ever could. I want us to be the kind of partners who protect the connection, even while navigating difficulty. Presence also means witnessing each other fully, not just the parts that are easy to love, but the parts that are still learning, still healing. I want to create a future where vulnerability isn't seen as weakness, where asking for support is met with care, not impatience, where we allow space for each other to be human. That kind of environment doesn't happen by accident. It's built through intention and repeated effort. I think about respect as something that deepens over time. As we learn more about each other's histories, values, and limits, respect becomes more specific, more informed. It turns into consideration, into foresight, into knowing when to step forward and when to step back. I want a future where that awareness continues to grow, where we don't stop learning how to treat each other well. Trust in the long term is about safety, emotional safety, knowing that your thoughts, your fears, your hopes won't be used against you, knowing that disagreement doesn't threaten belonging. With you, I feel that safety forming. It makes the idea of a shared future feel grounded, raw, rather than risky. It makes commitment feel less like a leap and more like a natural step. I imagine a life where presence shows up in ordinary ways, shared meals without distraction, conversations that aren't rushed, time that's protected because it matters. These things may seem small, but they accumulate into something meaningful. They create a rhythm that supports connection instead of draining it. That rhythm is what I want to build with you. The future I see isn't defined by constant happiness, it's defined by resilience, by the ability to face challenges without losing respect for each other, by the ability to grow without growing apart, by the commitment to stay present even when things are uncomfortable. These values don't promise ease, but they promise integrity. And integrity is what allows love to last. What I want is a future where we can look back and recognize ourselves in the choices we made, where we can say that we treated each other with care, that we stayed honest, that we remained present, that we respected not just the idea of love, but the person standing in front of us. That kind of future isn't built all at once, it's built moment by moment, through decisions that reflect who we are and what we value. With you, that future feels possible, not because it's guaranteed, but because it's something worth committing to every day.